Let's call what we're going to talk about tonight, let's call it lucid living. Some of you may have heard about lucid dreaming. Lucid living is what we're going to talk about. Now first, lucid dreaming is when you're having a dream, generally at night, and for some reason or other, maybe you've practiced it on purpose, maybe it just happens, but you become aware that you are dreaming. And so you become awake within the dream. And once you're awake within the dream, you suddenly realize, oh, this is a dream. I'm dreaming. And this, purple tree and these stick-like people here and all these other funny things that are going around aren't really real, and so I can change them. You stare at something and it transforms into something else, so you can say, well, I'm lucid dreaming now. I can desire to be any place I want. You think of a place you want to go, zoom, you're there. But you can transform things in the dream. Suddenly you have this tremendous sense of clarity. Everything is bright. All the colors are very bright and vivid. You have this great sense of energy that's flowing through you, and you start to have this marvelous experience on purpose. You decide, hey, I've got the power, I'm in charge, I'm in control, I can change this around. And that's lucid dreaming. It's not just the vividness, although when it starts to get vivid in a dream, we're getting closer and closer to that point. It's the awareness that you're dreaming that makes it lucid. Well now, we have a very interesting shaman point of view about this world of ours that we live in. And this shaman point of view about this world is that this is a dream. Now you've heard that probably, maybe not, but maybe you've heard it before in a lot of ancient teachings, some places from the Far East and some from other places in the world, where they say, this is just a dream, this is all illusion, this is that kind of a thing. Not very many, people hear that, of course. Not very many people take it that's true. Okay? It's a nice idea, it's an intellectual idea, but very few people act on it. There are some traditions also that have the tradition of waking up. Waking up here, but saying that most people are asleep. And so the tradition is, you've got to wake up within this in order to really be effective, in order to really have enlightenment. And a lot of people do all kinds of practices that are supposed to be designed to wake them up or help keep them awake. But somehow or other, often it gets lost in the translation. And we're proposing some of the reasons why that's possibly so. It's because when we're talking about waking up within this dream, we're really talking about waking up within a dream. That this is real out here, this experience of ours, but what it is a real dream. And that means that if you can wake up inside it, you can have the power to move things, to change things, to shift, to alter your body state, to alter your mental state, to alter the experiences that you're having with other people and with things in the world by waking up. By waking up. Now, just say, waking up, wake up, wake up. That doesn't do it. If you're in the, anybody ever had a dream where they dreamed they were dreaming? That kind of a thing? That doesn't help much. You wake up and you're still in the dream sometimes. Okay? Well, that kind of a thing goes on here too. But there are very particular things that are meant when we're talking about waking up within this dream. Okay? And not just being aware, having the intellectual idea that you're dreaming, but having the whole sense inside that you are dreaming, that this is a dream. Now, what is that sense? In order to get a clear understanding of it, you've got to understand what that sense is, what is really happening. If you can recall any lucid dreams that you've ever had, even if you haven't, maybe you've had an experience like this, that sense is one of a slight dissociation. It's a sense of being slightly apart from the dream itself. When you're in the dream and it's suddenly lucid, you suddenly realize, oh, I'm in this body and I'm having a dream. Right? Or I'm doing this right here and this is really a dream, but you're aware of your body doing certain things and objects around you and maybe people. But there's a slight sense of being detached, a slight sense of being apart. That's the sense of waking up in this dream too. Every once in a while people have that kind of, and it scares them, it bothers them. They'll have that sense of dissociation, like they're standing right over here, and their body's right here, or they don't seem quite connected with everything here that's going on in the world. Okay? And that sense of not quite being connected scares them because there are fear beliefs around the sense of being rejected, about not being integrated, about being part and separated. But what we're talking about is an experience, that experience of awakeness is one of recognizing that this is the dream and you are having it. And so there is that slight apartness. It doesn't have to be a sense of separation, but it is dissociation. Sometimes people get this when they're engaged in certain kinds of sports where they're so totally and completely focused that there's a little flip that happens. And some people have described it as sports or in a dance, let's say. I remember one time a description about a dance. Somebody was dancing like that, and they said, the dance was dancing me. And they had the sensation of simply being the observer who was going through the motions, not completely passively, but not completely being the person who was going through the motions. In other words, they were feeling it from not quite a slight disconnectedness. Okay? And when they had that kind of a feeling, it was just so easy and it was so free, and they were making all the right moves, times in tennis, or sometimes in ice skating, or sometimes in a lot of highly skilled sports. There's a point where it's like letting go, and the body does it, and the body knows how to do it, and it flows, and it does it perfectly and beautifully. Until usually it goes along for a period, and then the person starts to get their analytical mind into gear and says, oh, wait a second, this can't be happening. What if I make a mistake? Or is this really right? Or what's going on? And blip, they're back in the dream body, and they start to make a mistake and maybe fall down or something like that. Don't quite do it right at that point. If they're able to maintain that sense of allowance, allowing it, it's kind of like allowing it to happen and guiding it at the same time, because you're guiding it with your intent at the same time as you're allowing it to take place. You're not interfering with the process. And yet at the same time, you are guiding the process. Now, English is not a great language for trying to describe this kind of thing. So I'm trying in a number of different ways to get the sense of it across. But it feels like you're not quite in your body when something like that happens. And what is happening is that your spirit, if you like, is recognizing that the body and everything else here is a generation or creation that's taking place. Now, there are ways to learn how to be aware of that more and more. And when you are aware of that more and more, and you are able to connect with the source that is creating you, then what starts to happen is then you can make a statement or have an intent or shift yourself in such a way that your experience begins to change. Not just your experience, but some of the deeper states, if you want to call this, of shamanic awareness. The merest thought can alter the weather, or the merest thought can help someone else shift into a state in which they are, healed, or which they are get a greater sense of okayness, or whatever state that you might help them to get into by shifting yours. Now, some of the greatest healers and teachers who have been found themselves able to live in that state, those are the ones where someone just comes into their presence and they have a thought and the other person shifts. Because their aura, when you're at that kind of a focus, your aura is so powerful, so radiant, that someone else starts to come in it, and their ku is our term for the subconscious mind, their ku starts to resonate with a more powerful aura. And when it does that, then you can benefit from the way that person is thinking, if they are thinking at that level. Okay? If they're thinking at that level. And so this is why in the past there have been people who have been so powerful at that level that you could learn just by being in their presence. Because the ku shifts into that level of being when you're with them, and when you're with them and shifting like that, you are the awareness of what is your true nature, whatever knowledge that you need to have comes slipping into your mind real easy. And that's what happens in lucid states. When these happen by yourself, for a number of different reasons, energy-wise, and thoughts and combinations of beliefs can produce this. When this happens on your own, suddenly, this is what people call cosmic consciousness also. They're in that state, and suddenly, they know it all. Okay? They're awake, they're aware, they know the meaning of everything. And they come out in that state, and the best they can say is 42. Okay? That's an in-joke for anybody who's ever read Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy. I'll tell that story very briefly so you understand what I'm saying. They spend millions and millions of years and untold billions of dollars to generate a whole planet, which happened to be Earth, as a computer to find out the meaning of life. And finally the answer that the computer gave was 42. 42, they said. Okay. Well, that's the answer. Okay. Now, you want to go in again and set it all up to ask the right question? Okay. If they were awake, however, they would have instantly been in rapport and known what the question was to get that kind of answer. Okay. This is what it is. Okay. But maintaining that is one of the toughest things in the world. Maintaining that sense of being awake. It takes, in this society, until you build up to a level of habituation, it takes a constant kind of conscious awareness. A constant reminding yourself of who and what you really are. Remembering that you're a dreamer, dreaming the dream. Because it is so easy to forget that, and the forgetting of that is what the teachers in the ages are being asleep. I mean, we're walking around, we think we're pretty conscious, yes, but we're so into the dream that we don't think of anything apart from it. Now, there's an interesting thing. If you identify, it has a question to do with identification. If you identify with your body, and that means you don't maybe say it in these words, but I am my body. And so, if you hurt, I'm hurting. Okay? I'm sick. I'm not feeling good. Okay? Oh boy, I'm really working well today. Okay? And all those kinds of statements are statements of identification with the body. And there isn't anything wrong with that until something happens to the body. And if you're identified with the body, you can't fix it. You got to go to somebody else to fix yourself. Because you are the body and you're hurting. And that's what makes that so rough on people. Same way with people who identify with their feelings. I'm feeling sad, I'm feeling happy, I'm feeling glad, I'm feeling joyful, I'm feeling awful, I'm feeling miserable. Whatever the feelings might be, the person who is speaking that way is identifying with them. And when you identify with your feelings, you're stuck. Because you are whatever your feelings happen to be in the moment. And in order to do anything about your feelings, you've got to dissociate from them. Think of your feelings as something that's happening, or think of your feelings as energy flows that are taking place. Then you can move and alter them. But as long as you are, this is my feeling, this is what I am, not my feeling, this is me, you're stuck there. And so a lot of people have no idea that they can change their feelings by shifting a thought, by breathing differently, by doing any one of a great number of things, because they are their feelings. Now, in the terms that we're talking about, that's being asleep in the dream. With whatever you are identifying with, if that identification is either an experience that you're having, or an identification can be an identification with a group, it can be an identification with your environment, with your family group, with your career, with whatever it is, whenever you start saying, this is what I am, that's your identification. And you can't change it until you disidentify with that and identify with something else, preferably greater. If you start identifying with something greater, then you have the power of the greater. And that takes remembering. And that's all that the waking up is. It's that process of remembering. When I say remembering, maybe at first it has to be deciding. Deciding what you're going to identify with, what your true nature is. Now, what is your true nature? Well, I'm going to be a little redundant. Your true nature is what you decide it is. This comes from one of our first principles that we talk about, that the world is what you think it is. That means the whole universe and all of your experience. Your true nature is what you decide it is. And that's how you will act and react in this life. There isn't any true nature that's apart and separate from you. It's more a thing that you grow into a realization of. Till eventually, someday, maybe you'll decide my true nature is everything. At that point, you'll stop saying that because you'll be identified with everything, and there you'll be. Okay? In order then to start a process of creative experience, you're going to have to dissociate even with being everything. Well, God's the only one I know who's been able to do that one. Maybe the rest of us will find out how when we get there. Okay? But if you identify, if you decide that your true nature is greater than this physical reality, then you start having access to an incredible kind of power. Positive power, loving power, because by its very nature, as you find out when you do that, by its very nature it's loving. And when you identify with a more powerful, positive, loving power, that this is what you really are, and you keep reminding yourself of that, then you're able to experience this dream with a looser kind of feeling. We have, and because of that looser kind of feeling, be able to have an influence on any aspect of it whatsoever that you direct your attention to. As long as you're operating from that level. See, operating from within the dream, people get into all kinds of trouble because they try to control events and circumstances. Control their feelings, control their body, control their relationships, control their circumstances. That's the only thing you can try to do from within the dream. And that just doesn't work. It sets up a greater and greater tension and a greater and greater breakdown. Control doesn't work. When you're operating from, let's say, slightly dissociated or outside, being in the system but not of it, as some people have called it, then you don't need control. Then you find out that all you need to do is direct your attention and events begin to happen. You direct your attention in a particular way and events start to take place. But it takes a certain degree of confidence, necessarily, and self-esteem to be able to operate from that position. Because here you are saying, well, I'm having all this influence on here, but, who am I really? And that can shake you back into going to sleep again. But if you have that enough sense of self-esteem and enough sense of self-confidence to trust that greater part of you, that its nature is good and that it can only do good, and you trust that, then when you're operating from that level, you can't do any wrong. You won't do any wrong. It becomes impossible. And no control is involved. None whatsoever. So you can think a thought about an experience and it'll be just exactly the right thought, and people will change and conform to it because that's their part of your experience, and they'll do it willingly and gladly. And it won't be control. It'll all be cooperation. If you are used to only the idea of control, that statement sounds kind of strange. But you got to experience it. When you start experiencing it, you realize the immense, incredible cooperation that's going on right now. The people in your life that you know are the way they are because they are cooperating with you in doing it. Okay? And you may not like the way they're cooperating, but what I'm suggesting is in order to really be able to influence that in the best way possible, this is not the only way. It's a wonderful world. There's all kinds of ways to do things. But this way gives you access to the greatest amount of power and the greatest amount of love in action. It's kind of dissociating. How can you start? What can you actually do? I mean, it's nice to talk about this, but there's got to be some practical way to do it. Just before I give you the practical way to do it, I want to give you a kind of an image of it that some people will be able to relate to and some may not. Nevertheless, this is a common image that's used with shamans all around the world, and that's the image of the spider in its web. There's always this sense of the world being a web, and the shaman is the spider. And the spider weaves the web, and the spider is on the web, but not stuck in the web. And so everything that happens at the web, no matter what distance, the spider is able to determine this is important, this is not important. If it's not important, a leaf brushes against the web, the spider won't budge. If it is important, fly gets over there, spider's on it. And very carefully, because spiders can get stuck in their own web. Because the spider knows that every other strand is not sticky. The shaman, that's right, if the spider steps in the wrong strand, it's stuck. The shaman, it's the same way. If the shaman forgets who he or she is, he can get stuck in the web again. The moment the shaman remembers, he's on the unsticky strands again. Right? And so this is a kind of a metaphor that's used by shamans all over. That there is the web, and we are on it, but not in it. Then we have access to that greater power to influence things for the good. And like I said, it will only be for the good because of the nature of the universe. Now, what to do? Well, it's going to sound kind of simple, but this is an effective way to begin. Is to decide that you are the director of your life. We have a concept of 3 selves in Huna, and we have one which is, we can call it, I will call it Kane, sometimes Almakua, and we have Lono, and we have Ku. And each of them plays a role. Kane is the creative self, the creator. The creative energy that flows through us, God within, if you want to call it that, our creative source of infinite loving power. Lono is the conscious mind, and it's the director. That's the you that you know, that you identify with. That's the you that you know of as you. And it is whatever you decide it is. But the intent of that conscious part of your mind is to direct events, to direct your energies, really. Ku, well, there's a number of ways that we can call the Ku. Ku is like a robot. In much older times, you would have called it a servant. Okay? It has perfect memory, but it can only do what it's learned how to do. It can only do what it has experienced and learned. It can only do what you teach it to do. It can only do what it gets directly from the creative force. Okay? Now, your role as Lono is to take the end of this creative energy and channel it through the Ku out here into experience, which means you have access to both sides when you remember that you do. And the more you identify with Kane, that creative force, the more of that power you have access to. So it starts like this. Make this into an experience to become lucid dreamers. Take a deep breath, let your eyes close. Decide that you have a direct connection to this creative force within, whatever you choose to call it. And allow yourself to feel as best you can, to be aware of that energy. And as best you can, to be aware of that love. And now turn your attention to your body, just your attention, and tell your body what to do. You might tell your body, okay, get healthier. Relax more. You got any tense muscles right now? Relax them. You got any sore spots in you? Why, you know exactly what to do, body, to release them. You have all the information and knowledge in your cells, so use it. If there's any toxins, expel them. Body, you know exactly what's going on in every cell. Bring every cell up to optimum. Now that's what I want you to do, and so do it. Then turn your attention to your feelings. And say, okay, feelings, stay positive. Let's not have any more fear. Fear is not part of us. Fear is just some distorted energy, and I don't want to have anything more to do with it. So if fear starts to come up again, feelings, you change it around. It's just energy, so you transform it. Feel confident, feelings. That's what I want you to do all the time, more and more. Feel confident. Any other feelings? I don't accept them. Don't suppress them. We don't need to. Change them. That's all. Sometimes feelings, you want me to let me know that something's going on? Great. As soon as I'm aware, that's it. Change them. Until all we have is confident feelings. A real confidence. And turn your attention to your mind. Say, okay, mind, I'm going to think positive from now on. That's what I want you to do. Think positive thoughts, confident thoughts, happy thoughts. If any other thoughts come in, you don't have to suppress them. Just chase them out. They're not ours. They're not mine. I don't acknowledge. I don't own them. You think positive thoughts. You think happy thoughts. You think good thoughts, mind. Old memories come up. That's okay. Change how you react to them. If they're unpleasant memories, they're not important anymore. Fade them out. If they're pleasant ones, dwell on them. Increase them. Those are good. Any fear thoughts come in, it's the same way as the feelings, mind. Chase them out. We don't need them. I don't want them. Any doubt? Ha! Get rid of that. Doubt is not mine. I declare right now that all doubt comes from without. And so the moment any doubt thoughts come in, mind, chase them out. A good skeptical analysis once in a while, that's okay. But no doubting myself. No doubting yourself. Don't allow it. Think confident. Think loving. Feel confident and feel loving feelings. Body, you act confident. Act loving. World out there? Okay, world. You're part of my projection too. So you start being a better world. You start giving me more happy experiences. Start giving me more happy relationships. More good ideas, more opportunity for creativity, world. That's what I'm telling you to do. And I don't have to know how all this is going to come about, because high self, that greater power that I'm in touch with, that infinite love and energy, you know how to do all of this. Thank you. Thank you for helping me create a better body. Thank you for helping me create happier, more loving feelings. Thank you for helping me think more positive, confident, happy thoughts. And thank you for helping me create a better world around me. Mahalo. Thank you. Aloha.